everyone, and welcome back to another week of the Bulletproof Hygiene podcast. We hope that you have had a fantastic week of taking the best care of your patients. I hope that you're feeling fulfilled, refreshed, energized, feeling good about all the things that you accomplished, all the great things that you did for your patients this week. And if you are not quite feeling that way, I hope that you get some time to rest and relax and that you have a better week this week. Today, we are talking about the topic of onboarding a new product or protocol and how we can make that happen in really any office. So there is a specific framework that I have used for years that has been highly successful in not only onboarding a new product to the point where others start using it and others are excited about it and willing to report back, but that, patients are saying yes, they're enrolling, doctors are happy about it, the team is happy about it, everyone understands these products, from start to finish in a deep and working way. Like they have a working knowledge of what the products are, what they do, and what the purpose is. So there's a specific framework that has worked best for me. And today I'll use a couple of examples of how this has worked in regarding PerioProtect, regarding Microbe Link DX, and regarding our VoiceWorks system. All of these onboardings are kind of from start to finish a big ask. It's a lot of work, but they're well worth it on the back end in regards to the value that these things bring to our patients, the education that we can bring to our patients using these tools, and time saving wise regarding the VoiceWorks.
And I want to say thank you, Brittany, for bringing this to us today, because I do think this is a big issue we have in hygiene, where we will, maybe go to a CE course and see something new and get excited about something, or, kind of hear about an idea or a protocol and think, oh my gosh, that would be awesome. And then like that immediate thought after is like, but it's never going to work. Nobody's going to use this. Like the doctor's going to say no, like not everybody's going to get on board. So sometimes like we might get excited about something, but then we like immediately like talk ourselves off the ledge because we're like, well, it's not going to work. And then we never try it. So I love this concept of laying out an idea and a pathway for this, because I think obviously the future is all of the new things and the new technologies and the new research that's out there. So I think having a plan for how to do this is a beautiful thing. And I just really appreciate you sharing it with us, because I think you really have perfected it.
Thank you.
And I don't want to take light away from the fact that I know it's been a lot of work for you. And that is something for our listeners to keep in mind. Anytime you're onboarding something new, whether it be a product or a protocol or a system, it does take work. It does take time. Don't lose heart. Be committed to it, because, if it's something that you really believe in and that you really see value in, it's worth the work.
It's definitely a lot of work to do this, but what I will say is that if you choose to implement kind of the way that I have started doing this at Spodak, you can at least not have to reinvent the wheel by trying to come up with the how do I onboard this, because I'm going to give you the specific steps and you can use it and apply it however you want to really any product. And what Charissa just described is exactly how it happens, right? We go to a continuing education event, we see a new product, a new service, a new something, and we are there and we get all the scientific research, the sales reps or whoever is educating us about this product from start to finish. We get all the valid and reliable research. We understand how this is valuable to the patient, to our practice, what revenue it might bring. So we get to see all that, and that creates excitement for us, But I think something that is important to remember is that if the rest of your team didn't go, they haven't had the opportunity to get to the level that you have regarding, the deep understanding, the deep appreciation you have for this product, why it's so important. So they don't have that level of excitement. And to them, when you're coming with a new idea, a lot of times it feels like, oh God, another thing, here's going to be more work for us, is their initial like maybe thought or impression. But I just want to say, those automatic negative thoughts keep a lot of people from trying to onboard new things. And that creates boredom in our practice. It creates boredom. It's not what's best for the patients to just keep doing things as status quo. We are in the field of medicine where things are constantly evolving. And that's a blessing because it keeps what we do very interesting, right? We don't have to stay with just the prophy pumice polish. We can start air polishing. We don't have to stay with, traditional floss only methods. We can use the Sonic Fusion 2.0, water pick plus electric toothbrush plus floss,
Right.
just there's so many different things out there. If we're willing to learn and stay open-minded about it, that will keep our careers refreshing and revitalizing and exciting for us. So this is one of those things. So I will give a couple of examples, like I said, about the salivary testing, about PeriProtect, and about VoiceWorks, and kind of what those processes looked like. So on the front end, I'll give a little background here. I went to visit Charissa in 2018. I had heard that she was their hygiene unicorn. She was producing $500,000 a year. And, I had that immediate thought of like, oh my gosh, what's she doing? She has to be cheating. She has to be doing something crazy. She's got to be doing extractions and Invisalign. And what is this lady doing, right? So then I turned on my actual adult brain and said, okay, what is she doing? I want to go learn from her. Went and visited her with my colleague, Ashley, and we learned about PeriProtect. And, just watching Charissa explain it to her patients, hearing her talk about the outcomes that she has seen firsthand from her patients using these PeriProtect trays, hearing about the revenue, the actual profit, the lab fees, the costs. We picked her brain about what was involved in submitting prescriptions, how the doctors viewed this, her verbiage on this topic. And we thought, man, this seems just like the golden egg here, like the golden ticket. This is a no-brainer. It seems like this is something that we really need to consider to bring on in at my practice, And of course, that was just the very, very, very front end. That was the very, very, very step one. At that point, I hadn't researched it myself. I hadn't gotten real numbers on paper. I'm going off of what Charissa is telling me, which is really valuable information and what we initially were interested in. It brought that initial interest, but then I knew that there's a lot more work to do. So when we were onboarding PeriProtect at our office, there was a lot of convincing to do. And I think the most difficult thing about trying to implement a new project or new product is at first you have to prove to your team that this is a worthwhile experiment for your patients and for your practice. So like we just said, if you went to a CE and you learned about something new, like air polishing, PeriProtect, educational tools, and you understand the research and purpose and how exciting it is, and you got all fired up, the first thing you need to remember is that unless your team was there with you at this event, they didn't get the experience. They didn't get to experience this product in the same way. So you essentially have to understand that you have to understand the product enough to thoroughly and confidently pitch it to the team before you choose to do that. Okay. So the first thing is, Dr. Bolden loves to say, don't blow your ask. So when you're bringing a new idea to your team, make sure your first conversation about it is a strong one. So if you go to your team and you say, and what you're explaining to them isn't backed by valid and reliable peer-reviewed research, or if you're unsure about how the product works or benefits the patient, or if you're just not certain about why and how and why this would be good for everyone, your uncertainty may not do the product justice, and this will be your team's first impression of this product.
Yeah.
So you don't want to do all of the work before you say to the team, like, hey, is this something that we would consider? Because that, it's like chicken or egg kind of thing. Right. But you do want to come with some information saying, hey, I don't know everything about this, but would you guys be willing to consider something of this nature should it prove to be as valid, as reliable as it seems?
Right. And I think you should do some of the legwork beforehand, obviously, so that you know that what you're bringing is something that would benefit. And I think all the products that are out now, there's reps, right?
Right.
So
right.
it's, you don't have to do all of the research. Reach out to the rep and say, hey,
100%.
What can you send me? Send me the research that you have, send me the peer-reviewed articles, send me how this whole process works. Help me really understand it. I mean, reps are willing to spend the time with you to have the conversation, so that you really feel good about what it is you're bringing in. And then you can communicate that effectively. Because you're right. If you just kind of like, oh, I saw something and it looked really cool and maybe we should try this, but you don't have any of the details, or it's not the best thing, like you're just going to get shot down, and then that's going to be over and done with. So come with the information.
Yeah. And there's a chance, that the product maybe isn't the best thing. So if you're pitching this to your team and then you discover, oh, this is actually kind of shoddy, or the reviews on this product aren't so good, or something, like on the back end of that conversation, then you've kind of just lost a little bit of like validity, your own, like the team's trusting you almost, so that sucks to find out on the back end. So Charissa and I say all the time, don't let the pursuit of perfection stand in the way of making progress. Perfection is the chronic enemy of progress. So when I'm saying, make the first pitch good and go in prepared, that's all we mean. And it's all anyone can do. So if you do your due diligence and you get all the background information, you present your case and how it will benefit patients, practice providers, and the collective answer is still no, you can at least in that situation walk away knowing that you did all you possibly could. So that's not a blown ask. That's potentially just a missed opportunity for your team, but not because of you. Right. So you can walk away from that situation if that ends up being the case, saying, I did everything that I could. I educated myself, I educated my, boss and team members and whatever. Maybe this isn't, the right practice for this product or vice versa. But just like Charissa said too, sometimes it's helpful before having that conversation. Remember, a lot of companies offer lunch and learns. They don't charge the office. They're selling something, they want you to buy their product. So they offer their time a lot of times at no charge. So this may be an opportunity for a Q&A session or a learning session about the product that you might be interested. So, to determine, is this a good option if your team needs to hear it from the company instead of you? Yeah. And sometimes they do need to hear it from the company instead of you, because one, like Charissa said, the company knows the product best. They represent this product. They sell it all day long. They have been talking about the science for years and years. And also sometimes it's just like, it's just Brittany. What does Brittany know? Like she's saying we should do this thing, but she's just a hygienist like us kind of thing, which isn't an ideal attitude to have about our colleagues or our team members. But I think sometimes the familiarity is what keeps people from really thinking, oh yeah, this could be a good idea. Like it's not, so it separates it from being like, oh, it's just Brittany, like, with more ideas, like what she wants to do, to this is the product, this is the rep, and here's all the background info, like, let's make a collective decision. And no matter where we are in this process, if we're in the learning phase, the best thing that you can do during this process is be transparent about where you are in the process. So if you're like, okay, I don't have all the information, I don't know enough about this product to pitch it to the team yet, say that to the team. Hey, I went to a CE, I learned about this product. I think it sounds great from what I understand about it. This is what it supposedly does. This is supposedly how it would benefit our patients. This is supposedly how it would help us to save time. Would you guys be open to a lunch and learn with this company to help us determine if this is something that we want to onboard? So just say, I don't know, I don't have all the information, but I want to get more information. Would you be interested in joining me doing this?
Right. And I think another point to make as we're presenting these things to our teams is figuring out ahead of time what the benefit will be and presenting that as well. Mm-hmm. Because obviously, if it's your practice owner or your doctor, honestly, they're going to be concerned about what is the bottom line of this from a financial aspect. Yes. What kind of, profit is this going to bring in? What's our cost going to be? Like, really understanding that is important. Mm-hmm. To our fellow clinicians, you're going to have the question of like, well, how much time is this going to take? Because I don't have enough time for this. Or how much education is this going to take for me to learn this? Like, what's this process going to look like? Because, we talk all the time about like, there's always those like automatic negative thoughts of like, hey, I hear this is new, but what's this going to mean for me? What's this going to mean change wise? What's this going to mean stress wise? Like, so it's important to, promote that aspect. And then also, obviously, because we're all in it for patient care, like, how is this going to benefit the patient? How is this going to benefit what the patient is going to receive from our practice care wise by using or implementing this? So I think just really coming across with all the benefits is important too, because the automatic tendency is to be like, oh yeah, that sounds great, but I don't have time for all that. If you really understand that it's going to bring a lot of benefit to the practice, that makes you more open to like, okay, like, and I've used this example multiple times. Like for me, when we brought the iTero in, I had that like, ooh, this is going to take time and I don't know how to do this. And, there was definitely that, like hesitancy and that negativity. But once I got it down, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Like why, I wish we would have had this years ago.
Right. So. Right. And like you said, we'll get into it a little bit further down too. But anticipating people's questions and anticipating some of the potential, not just questions, but what's the word that I'm thinking of? Like pushback almost, like what would the barriers be? Like talking about the barriers before people start talking about the barriers. So like Charissa just said, I know that this, may not save us time, but it'll save us this, or, I know that one of our main concerns is timing here and making sure that we have time to do everything that we need to do every single day for our patients. So I just want to let you know up front that we're going to use air polishing instead of traditional pumice polishing. And so we're exchanging one system for another. And not only does the air polishing, disrupt biofilm subgingivally and supragingivally, so it saves us a lot of cavitroning time. It also is less abrasive on the tooth and works more effectively to remove stain than pumice polishing. So it's going to actually save us time. We won't have to sit there and scrub off that stain, and we won't have to, try and debride every square millimeter of the root with our cavitron tip. The air polisher is going to disrupt that biofilm for us. So it's going to save us a lot of time doing the other things that we normally do. So if you throw that out on the front end, you've just solved a mental issue for them of, oh God, is this going to take more time? Because that's obviously a very common barrier. So I'll start with step one. I would recommend starting with the practice leader or decision makers at your practice. So I didn't, when I came back from visiting Charissa and thought this might be a good idea, I actually didn't go to my hygiene team. I went to Dr. Craig, because I don't want to go to my hygiene team and get them hyped up about something, or, them start talking about something, and Dr. Craig hear about it from their end and him be like, what's going on? I didn't okay this.
Right.
I wanted to ask him if he would even entertain this in the first place, because if not, then why start doing all the other things? So I explained to Dr. Craig that I thought this would be a good fit for our practice. I explained the research, the purpose, the lab fees, the projected profits per case, and case acceptance using ABS as an example. So use Charissa as an example. Our offices are very similar in the high quality of dentistry and the high level clientele that we have. So in the fee for service fees that we use, our fee schedule is very similar. So this was a very apples to apples argument to make profitability wise. I asked what else he would need from me to let us try to incorporate this in our office. And his request was that if I could get every doctor on board and get 100% yes consensus from them and our hygiene team, we could move forward with this. So this may sound like that's not a big deal if you have a practice with 1 or 2 doctors, but we have like 12. So had to get through 12 doctors and 8 hygienists, and everyone had to 100% agree that this would be good for us and our practice and our patients, and get the go ahead to move forward. So that was quite a daunting task, and it was definitely a process. So step one.
Did you go to each one individually, or was that like a team meeting that you had?
So I think initially, I don't remember if I initially went to them as individuals and told them I'd be sending an email about this product, or if I sent the email then followed up individually. I don't remember in which order I went, but I know that I did both with everyone. It was necessary. Yep. Because I don't want anyone to feel like, people like to feel like they are involved in the decision-making process when it's a decision that will impact them. Yes. Right. So that's important. You don't just want to say, hey, I made a decision on behalf of you, so now you have to change the way that you practice because of me, and I didn't consult you about it. Like, that's not cool. People get bad feelings about that. So I did consult with them. I don't remember which way I went first, though, to be honest. So step one was start with the practice leader or decision maker. So go there first, present, your mini presentation, ask what they would need to move forward. Step two is the biggest step and the one that takes the most time, and it's convince the team. So it's important to make sure that the team understands everything possible about this product prior to onboarding it. It doesn't feel good, like we were just talking about, when an executive decision is made on behalf of people whose lives it will impact. So if they are not included in the decision-making process, there's usually some bad feelings in the back end about that. Also, when people are part of the decision-making process, they tend to own the decision more than if someone just said, hey, you have to start doing this. If they were part of the decision-making process and they helped assemble the plan of how we're going to implement this, and they were able to contribute to the plan, they feel some responsibility for making sure it goes to plan. Right. So it's helpful to go this route. So if there's one thing that I've learned from working with a large team, it's that you don't offer a large group of people a bunch of options at once. And you definitely don't present a half-assed or half-assembled plan to them. What you do is prepare as much as you can, answer as many questions upfront as you can anticipate, and there will be a lot less to do after the initial info dump. So what I mean by not presenting a lot of options is, for example, if I were proposing something that I wanted to onboard, such as a new type of blood pressure cuff, I wouldn't show the team 7 different models of blood pressure cuffs and ask them which one they thought would be best. I would do the research and then maybe whittle it down, and I may ask for help with this research. I may ask one or two other people to help me research. Okay. That's the max I would do, because when you get more people involved, it's a lot of opinions, a lot of ideas. It gets just messy, hairy. You're going to get on this track where you are just stuck and you give up and throw in the towel. So don't include too many people on the front end. So I would do the research preliminarily and maybe ask, like I said, a couple of strong team members to partner with me on this and decide on the best 1 or 2 options first. Okay, so I may have been considering seven blood pressure cuffs at the beginning, but I'm going to whittle it down to 1 or 2 blood pressure cuffs before I consider bringing this to the team. So let's say you're considering bringing on an air polisher and you're like, hey, there's these 10 air polishers I'm looking into. No, don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to the team. You need to research the air polishers that you're interested in and maybe partner with someone to brainstorm about which one fits your practice best, which one is most cost effective, which one is best for the patient, which one's going to make everything easy, streamlined, most comfortable. Whittle it down to 2 options, I would say maximally, okay, for giving the team options. Or if you can make that decision and say, this is the one that makes the most sense, then do that before presenting to the team. You don't want to come with a bunch of options because you will never get to where there is a consensus and everyone's happy about the decision. So don't do it. It's a mess. So in the instance of PerioProtect, I had to present to a lot of doctors, not intimidating or difficult at all. I started constructing an email, and I'm going to tell you what was in the email here, what convinced the team. So the best way to do this was to create the complete protocol and forward it along with the link for them to review peer-reviewed research in the same email. So I decided, because there were so many team members that needed to approve this and so many people involved, and more than half of them are doctors. Doctors are going to have a million questions. They're already skeptical of this woo-woo voodoo we call PerioProtect and hydrogen peroxide gel and all the things. And it's not a common product that people know much about, like widely. So there's a lot of information I'm going to have to provide on the front end. And then I fully expected and was aware that we would have some work to do to alter the protocol before we were able to bring it on board. So just because there are so many people involved, I kind of took the initiative to create the entire protocol before even sending and saying, here's the research, here's the product, what do you guys need to be okay with bringing this on? I just said, hey, here's the plan. What else do you need from me prior to bringing this on and onboarding it? So
I love that, by the way, because if you just send over the information, then there's so many questions. But if you already have it laid out to like, hey, this is the information. This is how I see it working in our practice. This is how we would, is exactly what the process looks like. That alleviates a lot of questions and brings some comfort to like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like you've already thought it out and you're just sharing the entire plan.
Yeah, and I'm showing them from the front end, this is very important to me and to our team. I clearly think it's a good idea. I invested a lot of time in designing this protocol, and I am making an attempt to make this smooth as possible. What is your feedback?
Right.
So the parts that I included in the protocol that I sent were the following. So we can consider this step 3, but really it's a part of step 2, which is still convincing the team. So I explained what the product is. In this case, it was PerioProtect. So I explained what it does, what it doesn't do, what its limitations are, what other procedures it could potentially replace, such as NSPT in some instances, and other procedures that it cannot replace, such as LANAP. So I was very clear about this because we offer so many perio treatments and so much different type of surgical, non-surgical periotherapy that I knew there would be questions about, well, is this going to just replace everything that we're doing perio-wise? Or like, where does this fit in our treatment modalities? So I answered all those questions up front. I answered what medicaments could be used in the tray and in which instance is each appropriate. So I went into the vibromycin, the purpose of that, and into the perio-gel and the purpose of that, the frequency of use, how the patient would use it, and the specific science behind why this works. I next went into how to determine who is a candidate. So I gave a list of who is a candidate and why each person was a candidate. Rationale for recommendation, reason we're recommending to onboard this, such as, it's a lower cost to the patient, it's high effectiveness, and it helps us to manage this chronic disease. I included patient education verbiage and verbiage that should be used for enrolling patients. And I partnered with Charissa on this because she already had great verbiage. So why reinvent the wheel? I included how to treatment plan this, where to find the codes in Dentrix. I included the actual codes, what the D codes were, the fees, how to post it to the ledger, who to post it to. And then I included how to scan for trays with the iTero and the steps for submitting the prescription and sending the perio chart along with it. I included an example prescription form and contact number for Perio Protect, how the trays would be checked in and kept track of. So how we would track who's got delivered, who would be delivering, how the delivery would go. The perio tray delivery process from start to finish, including what the patient's take-home instructions would consist of and look like. I included follow-up procedures, including reevaluation. So we reviewed how we would measure the progress using 4-week re-perio charting or first recare perio charting and subsequent perio charting, obviously measuring bleeding points. I included pictures of the trays and how well they work when seated properly. And as I mentioned, I attached a link at the end of the email for each doctor to research as they saw fit. So I just sent a link with a bunch of valid and reliable peer-reviewed research about hydrogen peroxide, topical and subgingival use over extended periods of time. And then they could just research that on their own. So even with all this information loaded and ready to go, the doctors did still have questions, and one had quite a few concerns about follow-up procedures. And she even asked, well, will you be salivary testing to confirm efficacy? And I said, no, because the standard of care is, for any other procedure we do, whether we're doing scaling or doing surgery, is we probe the patient. That's our follow-up. That's how we measure progress and changes and disease activity or arrested state, right? So I said, no, we'll be perio charting just like we do post LANAP, year after LANAP or after surgeries or after NSPT, and we'll mark the bleeding points, and that's how we will be determining blah, blah, blah. So there was a lot of back and forth. There was a little bit of snarkiness that went on. There was some skepticism. I encouraged, whoever was skeptical to read the documents that I had sent over, read the link. And if they chose not to, then they didn't do their due diligence, but that's on them. It's like at some point, it's up to them to research and feel comfortable about it. So after about a week, I did get the go ahead from all the doctors and from Dr. Craig, and we were ready to go. So next thing, the next tier was I had to pitch this to the entire hygiene team and basically repeat the same process for 8 hygienists. They were a little more open to this, obviously, because they understand the perio equation. We're the ones seeing the perio maintenances that aren't truly in maintenance. They're bloody, they're not arrested, it's a very frustrating thing. And we wanted to incorporate a tool that would help this not to be the case so much chronically anymore. So we did that for the hygienists. Some of them had barriers, initially they had questions and concerns regarding the cost, and they believed it was too expensive. Some of them doubted it would work, so I encouraged them to read the research. They wanted to see anecdotal evidence, which honestly to me doesn't make much sense, but I think it's kind of like the emotional side of anything. Like sometimes I'm like, I don't understand, like the facts are there, why is this emotional? But I think people need to see firsthand sometimes the outcome of what we are bringing on board. It's like the research is just kind of far away information that someone else did, and they want to see it, live in person. So for some of them, they refused to start using it until they saw that anecdotal evidence. So I started using it slowly, and eventually each hygienist slowly jumped on board when they started seeing my results. So I used, I'm sorry, let me take a step back here. So step 3 is essentially start using it, set a goal to enroll your first case. And keep in mind, you'll probably be the only one, using this at first. And then the more you use it, the more confident you become, and people see what you're doing and tend to adopt what you're doing when they see like, oh crap, it's working. Oh crap, she is enrolling patients. Oh, patients are saying yes. I guess they start questioning their own barriers, know? So start using it. And at first, when I started using this, I had a few specific patients in mind that I really thought would be great candidates, who had those like bloody perio maintenances. We'd rescaled and placed antibiotics and referred to the periodontist, and some of them had osseous surgery or LANAP, and just disease reactivity, was happening. And it was just this really frustrating situation. So I had a couple of patients in mind that I had a lot of rapport and history with. So that was really helpful. And most of my first patients actually did say yes to me, because I explained to them from an honest and sincere place what I thought it could do for them and how I believed in it, and how, I think it could help them. And you've been through the ringer, and why not try something out of the box here? So I got a lot of yeses at first, but I think it's important to remember we've got to be okay with some of them saying no too. Sometimes if you're onboarding something and you start using it and your first 1 or 2 or 5 patients say no, it can be really disheartening. But you've got to remember, you're learning, you're still learning. How do I best present this to patients? It may just require a little more practice. Just because they're saying no doesn't mean the product isn't good or it won't work. You just may need more practice, or maybe you just haven't got to your yes yet.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's a numbers game.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I do understand the side of wanting to see something and make sure it actually does what it, promotes itself to do. And, having that anecdotal evidence, I do understand that. But I would say the point you're making right now, one great thing you can do, and I know this is what you did, is you came to me and you're like, Charissa, you've been using this for a while. Clearly you believe in it. What are you saying? What are you doing? How are you getting your patients to yes? Well, again, you can use the pipeline for whatever product this is, talk to your rep and be like, hey, do you have another hygienist that uses this? It's really strong in it. Like, I'd love to, do you think she'd be willing for me to ask her some questions? Like, utilize the community, look around to see people that have used whatever it is you're interested in and really love it and really know how to use it well, and lean in on them and their experience. I think that's just a really great way to get comfortable with something and learn like what verbiage works and what systems work and what's worked, what hasn't worked for you, and use that. I think that's a smart way to do this.
Yeah. And there's no reason we have to go it alone at all. Like, there's so many people who are so good at this stuff. Like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel or try and figure it out ourselves. If someone has a good system, pick their brain.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason to just try and make it work. It's great to have that person too, to troubleshoot things. So if your first couple patients do say no, like call the person, be like, hey, they're saying no, this is what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. They may have some really helpful suggestions. They may even be willing to come to your office and mentor and, do different things, maybe not. But, when it comes down to it, with any new or existing product, there are always patients who will decline, who will say no, and that's on them at the end of the day. So be okay with some patients saying no. It's a numbers game to some extent. So there will always be patients who don't move forward with your recommendation. If the first one is not a go, just keep going until you get your first yes. And then after you get your first yes, celebrate, say, this is awesome. We have success. It has officially been implemented and onboarded here. Like, take a moment and just pat yourself on the back and have some appreciation for that, celebrate that moment. So I would say step 4 is the celebrating, and that's the one that we usually skip. And then step 5 would be during the follow-up procedures for whatever it is that you're onboarding. Record and compile your findings, your photo, take photos, use your perio charts, start collecting data on your own cases, whether it's trying a new whitening system or MicroBlink DX. You could measure how much quicker was this than using traditional perio charting or having to do it myself. There's different ways that you can prove the effectiveness of whatever product it is, or the helpfulness of whatever product it is. So for me, I took a lot of photographs on my very first patients that I was trying this with. I wanted to see on the appointment that I was recommending this, I would take photographs and obviously do a perio chart, submit the script. And then not on the delivery appointment, but on the follow-up appointment, their first recare or that first follow-up appointment, snap some photographs, do a perio chart, and then along the way, every recare, snap some photographs, do a perio chart, snap some photographs, do a perio chart. Because that's great for getting it back to the team and explaining to them that anecdotal information of, how well it's working. So step 6 is report back to the entire team on how it's going. So if we implement something or say, hey, this is here, but then the team never hears about it again, they kind of just feel like it never really happened, or like it's not really here, so circling back with the team and letting them know this is very successful on board. Thank you guys for helping to make this happen. This is how successful it's been. and take an opportunity to show them your photos, show them your perio charting, tell them about your findings, your clinical findings and the bleeding points, and how if you're having challenges with this new product, how you're overcoming it. So that has been the way that has worked best for me in onboarding anything. And, I did the same thing with MicroBlink DX, the salivary testing. We did the same thing with Florida Probe and having everyone use it ahead of time and asking what they think and does it make your life easier or harder? When they give you that yes, that they're bought into it and they're going to use it, and it's going to benefit them. So it's all of the steps.
Yeah. And I've had this happen. So I can share a story where I tried to onboard something and just realized it wasn't a great fit. Like, that's okay too. You don't know until you kind of give it a good try. And so, I know you use the VoiceWorks, and I feel like calling out perio numbers to patients is one of the most important things we can do from an educational standpoint. And so we didn't have anything like that in place. So I started to think, I want to incorporate something like this that we can use, because I just think it's crucial. And so I started looking around out there and came across the dental rat. And thought, gosh, that might be a good solution for us. And so I just went to our doctor owner and I put together an email that explained, like, hey, I'm looking into this. This is how it works. This is the cost. This is how it could work for our team. But I would really like to get one and try it out and see if this is something that would work for us. And so we had a little back and forth about that. He actually was able to kind of broker a situation where we could give it a try. And I tried it myself. And then I had another one of our hygienists can just kind of try it out and realize there were some issues with it, being compatible with our software. And, just, it wasn't as user friendly as I had hoped with the bleeding point aspect. And not to say it's not a great product, because I have talked to several other hygienists, like at our summits, who said, oh my gosh, we use that and we love it. And I think that's great. It just wasn't a good fit for us in our practice.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important thing too. Like that to me was still a win, because we still looked at something that, potentially could have helped and gave it a try and didn't just like blow it off and be like, I don't know about that. Like, we actually tried it and said, you know what, this is a good product. It's just not a good fit for us. And that's still a win, and that's still okay. Now let me look around and see what are the other options.
That's totally a win. And, that's just your due diligence.
Yeah.
You're just doing due diligence, and that involves some work, and sometimes it doesn't work out. But guess what would be way harder? If you didn't do your due diligence, you onboarded this thing and then it didn't work. Right. So finding that out on the front end is the best thing. So researching is number one. So I'll just kind of summarize what we just talked about. And actually, I just realized that researching, I didn't make it a number. I started with telling our practice leaders about it, but research is really step one, obviously. So just in summary, step one is, learning about the new product, doing your own preliminary research. Step two is start a conversation with the practice leader or decision makers at your practice. Step three, convince the team. And that's a huge process, right? Step four, start using it and set a goal to enroll your first case. Have a few patients in mind. Step five, celebrate once you get that first case enrolled. Step six, record and compile your findings and photos and perio charts, or whatever, is involved in the product that you're trying to onboard. And step seven, report back to the entire team about how well it's going, what your challenges have been, and how you're overcoming them. Yeah. That is in a nutshell. That is the tried and true version of what has worked best for us at the Spodak Dental Group. And I think it will be super helpful no matter what you're trying to onboard. If anyone does have thoughts or questions about, onboarding new things, how to onboard, how to convince people that this is a good idea or bad idea, please reach out to us on our Mighty Network. You can download the app at the App Store and just search Bulletproof Hygiene. Feel free to post on that page anything that you're curious about. We want it to be this running commentary and this open dialogue and discussion about, like, hey, what's going on in your world and what's going on in our world. So please join us there. Charissa, do you have any final thoughts about onboarding?
Well, I know that I am personally excited in a few weeks that we will be attending the AOSH, American Academy of Oral Systemic Health conference. It's actually here in Atlanta in a couple of weeks. So I'm I'm excited about this conversation because I know whenever we go to a conference and we get to see and hear some new, that it's like, ooh, it kind of opens me up to knowing like, hey, if I see something that I think is really amazing, like I have a pathway that I can come back and really consider it. Ironically, I know both of our office managers right now are at the ADOM conference.
Yes.
And my office manager actually sent me a text the other night and was like, hey, have you heard of this? And it was like some information on a product. She's like, this is really interesting to me. So I'm excited for her to get back and tell me more about that. And she said she was going to get, some samples. And so, there's so many opportunities for us as hygienists to just look around at all the things that are out there. And I appreciate, like I said, you kind of sharing your hard work and you being through the process and having a pathway for as we move forward with these things. So
yeah, you're welcome. And I'm glad I get to share this stuff. I'm so excited for AOSH for the same reason. I can't wait to see what we can potentially onboard. We're currently investigating different air polishers. So I know that I'll get quite a bit about that probably there, and we'll see kind of what they have to offer, and then I'll have to start my own process once again.
Yep. Awesome.
All right, guys, it's been real. It's been fun. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great week, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye, everybody.